This is Test 2 Review, pages 1 and 2. So the first thing we're going to do is let's take a look at some inequality problems. I am going to do problems B, just like the problems we would be doing in the class, and you can try problems A by yourself. They are very similar to the B problems. So the first question here we're going to do is number 1. 2 times 2x plus 2 is less than 6x minus 6. So the first thing I'd want to do in this problem is distribute that 2x through. So I end up with 4x plus 4 is less than 6x minus 6. Now we want to bring all of the x's to the left side. And we end up with negative 2x. And let's also subtract that 4 to the other side. So negative 2x is less than negative 10. Now we just need to solve for x by dividing by negative 2. With inequalities, the most important thing that you should know is that when you do divide by a negative, you must flip the direction of the inequality sign. So my main inequality is that x is greater than 5. But in the problem, they want us to express our answer in interval notation and graph. So let's graph first. I kind of messed up my number line, so I'll draw another one right here. There's my number line. I have x is greater than 5. So here is x is equal to 5. And we are not equal to 5 actually, so it's an open circle, and the value is greater than 5. So there is the graph. The interval notation of this would be from 5, a parenthesis, not a bracket, but a parenthesis because you are not equal to 5 to infinity. Alright, so that means that this graph and the interval is our final solution to the problem. Alright, the next question that we're going to take a look at is this question 2, part B. The absolute value of 3x plus 1 is equal to 10. So if I'm going to go and solve this, I'll use a different color for this problem. We have to say that 3x plus 1 is equal to positive 10, and 3x plus 1 is equal to negative 10. And we will go and solve each of those problems. So that ends up being 3x. I'm going to subtract the 1 over. 3x equals 9. Divide both sides by 3. We end up with x equals 3. If we do the same thing here, we subtract the 1. We end up with 3x equals negative 11. Divide both sides by 3. And we get x equals negative 11 thirds. So there are the two answers. Remember, on the test there is a spot for you to write your answers. It'd be very nice of you if you could put your answers in that spot so I don't have to go searching for your answers when I grade the tests. So we end up just writing the 3 and the negative 11 thirds right there. And there's our answers. This next problem, sorry it's kind of fuzzy on here, but it says the absolute value of 6x minus 2 equals negative 11. This is the easiest problem on the test review because an absolute value cannot equal a negative number. And because an absolute value cannot equal a negative number, then the answer to this problem is no solution. And guess what? From there, you are done. Okay. Part A, if you look at part A, it's the same thing. You have a negative 6. Your absolute value cannot equal a negative. Now, the absolute values do get a little bit harder when you have an absolute value on both sides. But really not that much harder, just a little bit harder. What you end up doing is you can eliminate the absolute values from the right or the left side. I'm just going to rewrite this problem where I have the absolute value of x plus 4, and that is just going to equal x minus 5. Alright, so then when we go to solve this problem, we will have the absolute value of x plus 5x plus 4, can be 5x plus 4 equals positive x minus 5, or the 5x plus 4 can equal negative x minus 5. Notice that I did draw parentheses around my x minus 5, and that is so that that negative applies to the whole group, the whole factor, okay, not just the x term. So then we're going to go and solve each of these. We will subtract the x over and subtract the 4 to the other side. And we end up with 4x equals negative 9. So x equals negative 9/4. Here, if we have 5x plus 4, that's going to equal negative x plus 5. We must distribute that negative sign through. Please, please, please remember to distribute the negative sign through. Okay, I'm going to add the x over, and I'm going to subtract the 4. So we're left with 6x equals 1. Divide both sides by 6, and we have x equals 1/6. So our two answers here are x equals negative 9/4 and 1/6. You will get some fractions on these problems because they're really hard to make absolute values like this where you don't have fractions. Now let's take a look at when our absolute values have inequalities to them. So what we will do is we have, sorry that it's kind of hard to see, but really it shows the absolute value of 4x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 7. Okay, so we need to say that 4x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 7. You keep the first positive sign the same. And then the second one, we would have 4x plus 2. And then you want to multiply that 7 by a negative 1 because absolute value can be positive 7 or negative 7. But because I put a negative on that 7, you must flip the direction of the inequality sign. Now we will solve each of these basic inequalities by subtracting the 2 over. So you get 4x is greater than or equal to 5. And then dividing by 4, dividing both sides by 4. And we have x is greater than or equal to 5/4. There's one of the groups. Doing the same thing on the other side, we're going to subtract the 2. We have 4x is less than or equal to negative 9. Divide both sides by 4, and we have x is less than or equal to negative 9/4. Okay, now that we have our two inequalities, we want to see if they're going to go inward or outward. So let's start by graphing x is greater than or equal to 5/4. So here's 5/4 about right there. Since we can be equal to, it will be a closed circle. And it's greater than, so it's going outward like that. Or going to the right. X is less than or equal to negative 9/4. Would be about right there. You do not need to be precise on these graphs, as long as you show the relationship on the graph. So we have 9/4, it can be equal to negative 9/4, so we're going to close the circle. And since it says x is less than negative 9/4, we are going to go to the left. Alright, so that is the graph of the solution. Now we need to write the interval notation for the solution. So we are going to go from negative infinity to negative 9/4. a bracket because we can be equal to. And then we're going to put a U, which means it can be the first interval or, so it's a union, 5/4 to infinity. And the graph and the interval notation are the two things that they want in your answer. So that would be our solution. All right, that is it for the first 2 pages. On the next video, I will talk about the pages 3 and pages 4.